Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of NFL with Kyle or Interviewing Bronco Country, whatever you like to call it. This is our fourth interview that we've had. Our first interview was with a guy from Australia, and this guy is in the Philippines. What's up, Jesse?
Hey, how's it going, man?
Thanks for coming on. Happy to have you on. How long have you been a Broncos fan?
My whole life, man, as long as I can remember.
Okay. So, was that a Colorado thing? Are you kind of from Colorado?
So I grew up in Wyoming, and we're a little, don't have a sports team, so it was always Broncos all the time there.
Fair enough. Yeah, I know you reached out and said you were in the Navy. I just got out of the Navy. What did you do in the Navy, if you don't mind?
So I was an airframer, aircraft mechanic, 20 years.
Awesome. Yeah. What bird were you assigned?
So I started out on the A6B Prowler, and then I transitioned over to the Super Hornet, and then then I went on to the Growler. So another variant
Oh,
of the
okay.
Super Hornet.
Yeah. My one of a good friend of mine. He was a good friend. But he was a skipper at a Growler squadron. So were you in Washington State? I imagine.
Yeah, I was up
Whidbey
in
Island.
Whidbey Island for most of my career, all but about 5 years. 5 years I was down in Lemoore.
Okay, I spent the last 5 years in Whidbey Island, so
Yeah.
I was on the P8s. So
Okay, yeah. So you were the big wing Navy.
yeah, big wing Navy. I was gonna do 20 years. I don't know how familiar you are with the P8s, but we fly with sonobuoys,
Yeah,
and
no, I'm pretty familiar. Pretty familiar.
okay. Well, I'm the infamous guy that got blown up by a sonobuoy.
No, I didn't
We
hear
had
that story,
never.
but that sounds terrible.
Yeah, I got NATOPS updated.
Yeah, that's never good.
Yeah, no, not at all. But now I just kind of am transitioning out, trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to do now? Because I worked. That was the hardest thing I ever did was get qualified as a naval air crewman, and I was
Yeah,
so proud of myself. I was a guy that didn't graduate high school, got a GED. Was a
yeah,
bartender, and then just kind of threw myself into something really challenging and didn't really realize how challenging that was. And I just kind of stuck with it. And I was like, I'm not going to quit. And
yeah, yeah,
I kind of got pushed back at every level of training. I got pushed back, but I never quit. And eventually I got my gold wings, and I still got, I still got them right here. The Navy Air Crew Wing, so I'm really proud of them.
yeah.
And now
That's
it's
awesome,
time to
man.
find. Yeah, thank you. Now it's time to find another new pair of gold wings to chase. And my biggest passion has always been the Denver Broncos. And I was like, you know what? I think a channel, especially because I grew up in Wisconsin. Nobody's a Broncos fan. I don't know any Broncos fans. I've gone to my first Broncos game at 18. I saved all my money, flew to Denver, got my own hotel room, and I went to the game. I felt so alone, not because of any other reason, but just that nobody knew what it meant to me to be there. Um,
Yeah,
and then the longer I kind of went down this road, I was like, what would be really nice is to have some kind of Broncos community. Some, just some socialization with other Bronco fans and getting to know other Bronco fans. And it's really interesting because I haven't interviewed a Broncos fan from Denver yet. It's been the Philippines, Texas, Australia.
yeah.
Uh, it's been all over, including myself. So I'm really excited for you to kind of add to the diversity of fans that we've had, and being a Navy guy too just makes it even more exciting. So you
Heck yeah.
you just got out and you're doing your retirement traveling right now, but are you planning on going to any games when you come back stateside?
I don't know. So honestly, I've only been to 3 games in my life. So I don't know. They're pretty
Okay.
expensive, and it's about a 6 hour drive for me. So maybe it just all depends.
Yeah,
But I
they are
definitely catch
getting.
every game that I can on TV.
Yeah, of course. they are getting really, really expensive, and we'll talk a little bit more about the schedule in
Yeah.
a little bit. But let's talk about post Peyton Manning. Okay,
All right.
I like to ask everybody about this because everybody has a different perspective. Actually, most people have agreed. It's been kind of shit, and they feel optimistic about Bo Nix. But how do you feel about the past, 9 years? Not Bo Nix yet, but just has there been any of those years that you felt like, okay, I like our odds, and you were like, I can't believe I got fooled again. I had
Every
hope.
every year, man. Every year. Like I fall for the hype train every off season. Like doesn't matter whether it's Paxton Lynch or Russell Wilson or whoever in between. I always find a reason to get super stoked, and I've done it again, man. I'm super excited for this season as well.
Yeah, I'm the same exact way. I think it was 2020, and I was deployed to Sixth Fleet, and I was telling every one of my guys, like, watch out for the Broncos, dude. Seriously.
Yep.
I'm like,
Yep.
we
And then
just
you had to eat
drafted
your words.
yeah. We just drafted KJ Hamler and Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah.
Drew Lock finished 3-1 in his last 4 games. We signed
Yeah.
Melvin Gordon. Like, this team's ready to compete,
Yeah, no, I
And
get you. Like I had to eat so much humble pie in the last 9 years, especially being in the military, because man, it is brutal. It is
yeah.
brutal when you make your predictions and they don't pan out.
So true. So true. Um, okay, well, we have that. So now with the draft that just took place, Denver taking Bo Nix at 12 overall, immediate feedback on that selection, and then maybe how you feel about it today. So I say that because my immediate reaction was different than it is today. When it first happened, I felt like it was a little high for Bo Nix to be drafted because everybody was telling us that he was a second round selection and that he shouldn't have gone that early. But the more, I don't want to give you my reasoning. I want to hear yours. But like, how did you feel about it then, and how do you feel about it now?
So initially, I felt a little bit the same, right? I think that he was a first round quarterback either way because of his time in Oregon and, being up in the Pacific Northwest, you were kind of inundated with Oregon and the Washington Huskies. So I got to see him a lot on Saturdays. But ultimately, like, I think the kid is maybe doesn't have all the athletic attributes you would like in a first round quarterback, but I think mentally that his game is there.
Yeah, yeah, I agree, and you see the system fit too. I think Peyton Manning said
Right.
yesterday it's a perfect fit. It's a quarterback friendly system, and you have Zach Wilson, Jared Stidham, and now Bo Nix, and
Right.
Sean was saying in his press conference because I think it was the first time the media was able to attend an OTA. So they asked him, I think the press conference we used to get it every day. Now we only get it like once at the end of the week. But
Yeah.
he asked Sean about the quarterback thing, and he was like, in a way, these are all like orphans.
Yeah. Yeah. Like
you
I
know,
think he called them orphan dogs.
yeah, or orphan dogs. And it was so funny because it's so true. It's like you got all of these guys that, for one reason or another, just got kind of passed up on. Even Bo Nix is a first rounder. You wouldn't consider him an orphan, but then you go,
Yeah.
oh yeah, there were 5 quarterbacks selected before
Yeah.
him. Like he was the
He's the
last.
sixth quarterback picked.
Yeah, he's the last one. So, um,
In most drafts,
and
that would be a fourth round quarterback, the sixth quarterback off the board.
yeah, yeah, they make comparisons to the 1983 draft where Dan Marino was the sixth quarterback taken.
Yeah.
But what they don't bring for perspective is that Dan Marino was selected 31 overall. So he
Right.
was almost a second round pick. We're talking 6 quarterbacks in 12 picks. That's a big difference. Like that is a very heavy quarterback class. So in just like you said, it could have been a fourth. If it would have been a quarterback class of 2021, like where Kenny Pickett came up, he could have been the first quarterback taken, period. You know what
Yeah,
I
for
mean?
sure. And let's not also forget who was picking right behind us, right? Like I would hate to have passed up on Bo Nix because we didn't want to take him in the first round and have him go to the Raiders. That would be even worse.
Right. Oh my God. Somehow I locked this cat in my room. I got to open the door or you're going to hear meows the whole time. I don't
It's
know
all
if you
good.
guys watch Kill Tony. Come on. Go ahead. Do you guys watch Do you watch Kill Tony?
Never even heard of it, man.
Oh, it's a comedy club. I think Joe Rogan owns it in Austin. And
Right.
basically people come up there and they get like 1 minute to freestyle like that. I mean, not freestyle, like they have their 1 minute written, but then
Yeah.
they just get roasted by actual established comedians and they like critique them and give them really good tips. But when there's 1 minute, or I think it's when there's like 10 seconds left, you get a meow sound in the background. So I kept hearing that and getting like, oh, I gotta hurry up.
That was that dude on the Tom Brady roast, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the only time I think I've ever heard of it. But yes, I am a little familiar now.
What did you think about the Tom Brady roast?
I mean, I thought it was hilarious.
I thought it was like the best roast I've ever seen in my life.
Right. Yeah, it was hilarious. I laughed almost through the whole thing. There was a couple of duds in there, but for the most part, it was great.
Yeah. I think when they brought out Will Ferrell of Anchorman, Ron Burgundy, yeah, that's when I was like, this is the greatest thing that's ever been on TV. Like,
yeah, man. How many people get Ron Burgundy? You know?
yeah, and do you remember when he was when Manning was our quarterback? He did some interviews with Peyton Manning. They're still on.
I did.
They're still on. Yeah, they're still on YouTube.
No, I'd never seen those. I don't think.
When this video drops, I'll put it in the comment. I'll put the link in the comments. It's so funny.
All right,
It's kind of awkward. You can tell Peyton Manning's like he has like that nervous awkwardness because Ron Burgundy's like the most awkward interview you could ever do.
Right.
But yeah, good stuff. So, how are you feeling going into this season with Bo Nix? And do you feel like this is going to take some time, or do you think that experience he had in college is going to be, he's going to come in and look better than, say, Russell Wilson immediately? Which isn't like putting the bar too high. Russell Wilson was.
I mean, Russell Wilson didn't have a bad season last year. It was just a bad season for his contract, But like, honestly, the dude probably had the best quarterback season we've had since Peyton Manning. Like, I know that's an unpopular opinion, but it's honestly probably true, So it's just we're not going to pay $50 million for,
15
middle of the road.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I also felt like the numbers of Russell Wilson. Like if you were watching ESPN or a sports show and they said, look at these numbers, and you got Russell Wilson up there with, Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, with like
he wasn't that good.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I can tell you guys aren't watching Bronco games. And by the way, I'm okay with it because you're giving my team some publicity and you're putting some respect on my quarterback's name. So, but deep down inside, I'm like, look, the eyeball test is a real thing. And if you watch these games, like he did not belong in that category. That's for sure.
No, I would say he was middle of the road. Maybe on his best weeks, he was a top 15 quarterback. On his worst weeks, he was definitely, between 20 and 30. But that's the sad part about being a Broncos fan for the last 9 years is still I will go to battle and saying that's the best quarterback we've had probably. Last year, circa Russell Wilson, or maybe Trevor Siemian, but that's not a high bar.
No, that's got to be the competition. It's Trevor Siemian or Russell Wilson, and I think one thing Russell Wilson did give us that I will always be grateful for, even though it didn't work out for us, is like real hope.
The hype train was for real.
Yeah, exactly. Like, Teddy Bridgewater, Case Keenum, Joe Flacco, like all these guys, like I bought into it.
Yeah,
but when Russell Wilson,
you're starting to hurt me, making me remember it all.
Yeah. But when this Russell Wilson trade happened, like I didn't have to like put any effort into it. I remember exactly where
Right.
I was. I remember calling my family and being like, "It's over. It's over. The drought is over." Like,
The quarterback
uh,
carousel's done.
yeah, we have, a Hall of Famer, and it's really like such a cruel joke, when you really think about it. Like
It is, man.
how
It is.
excited we were.
And
But
you know
even though we
what?
didn't win those, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, maybe if Nathaniel Hackett wasn't our head coach, maybe it would have been different with Russell. Like that year under Hackett was terrible.
Oh yeah, man.
So, I mean, who knows how it could have played out?
Yeah, I was at the week 1 game where Russell returned to Seattle, and I saw that in person. That the
That field
moment
goal.
Russell, yeah, dude, the moment Russell Wilson was staring at Nathaniel Hackett, and Nathaniel Hackett was staring at Russell Wilson, and both of them didn't know what to do. That
Yeah.
was the moment, week 1. That was the moment where I was like, we do not
Yeah.
have Peyton Manning, because Peyton Manning would have known
Nah.
exactly what to do. And if Nathaniel Hackett said, "Hey, we're going to kick a field goal here," Peyton Manning would have been like, "Hell no, we're not kicking a field goal here. We're averaging 4.5 yards per play. It's 4th and 4. We're going for it here. And if we don't
Right.
get it, we have our timeouts. We're not going to run the clock out on ourselves and kick a 65-yard field goal." Like that, I don't even know how that became an option. It really like boggles my brain to think that these people are in these positions, and some kid playing Madden could have figured this out. Like, this is
Yeah.
not, I mean, honestly, it's like, how did you get this far? And then Nathaniel Hackett, he goes over to the Jets, and I was thinking about this last night with Zach Wilson, because, like, people are like, Zach Wilson's trash, we want to get rid of him. But we know firsthand what Nathaniel Hackett looks like as a play caller. And that's who was calling plays for Zach Wilson. So I think it's possible Zach Wilson has progressed and gotten better, but Nathaniel Hackett is such a bad play caller that maybe he didn't put him in the best situations, just like he didn't put Russ in good situations. So
Yeah.
when Sean was talking about the quarterbacks yesterday, he said, you can tell that Zach Wilson has the most experience. Like he looks like he has played in this league for a couple of years. And that doesn't, that means something coming from someone like Sean Payton. And
Right. He's taking his beatings. Yeah, he's taking his
exactly.
beatings. That's for sure.
And that's sometimes that's important. You got a quarterback that, and that I'm gonna die on this horse, but like that year with Aaron Rodgers there was so important, I think, for him. If you watched Hard
Yeah.
Knocks, when the Jets were on Hard Knocks, you got to see like kind of Zach Wilson as a kid, trying to justify to Aaron Rodgers why he wears the sleeve, why he has the visor. Like it just felt like a kid trying to get his dad's approval, like, oh, it actually does
Yeah.
this. And then towards the middle of the season, he just kind of was like, I'm Zach Wilson. This is who I am. I don't got to justify it to anybody. Like he got some of the confidence, I think, from, just being around Aaron Rodgers. And I say this all the time, like that's one of the most important things that a young quarterback can have as a mentor. There's a reason Green Bay has had stable quarterback play for over 30 years. It's because of the way, the system of which they bring in their quarterbacks underneath another quarterback. Like Jordan Love's not an accident. How many quarterbacks were under Tom Brady that just happened to be really good? Matt Castle, Jimmy Garoppolo, like these guys that just, Tom Brady got hurt and they came in the game and they're like, oh, this guy's good enough to start on another team. It's like, well, yeah, that's what happens when you're,
Right.
next to a legend for 5 years. So I do think that it's possible that Zach Wilson could start. I still, if I had to put my money on it, it's Bo Nix. But I wouldn't say that I would be totally shocked if Zach Wilson, proves to be the guy that starts week 1. What would you think about a Zach Wilson start on this team week 1?
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if any of the 3 start week 1. For one, we're going to Seattle, and it's a brutal place to play, right? Like no matter when you go there, like that stadium is loud. That defense is generally always ready to play. Stidham has the most time in the Sean Payton offense already, and Stidham is he's not a slouch, right? Like we're paying him $4 million a year for a reason. Like
Yeah.
My money is on Bo Nix, but I wouldn't be surprised if any of the three start. I think if Bo Nix doesn't start, it's more about just giving him a little bit more time. I don't think it's because he's not ready yet, right?
I totally agree. And um, that was one thing that Phil Sims, his son Chris Sims, he
Right.
has a
I saw
podcast.
the same interview. That's kind of where I picked that up from, but I think it's spot on.
Well, yeah, I was actually gonna point to the part where he said the one thing he was worried about is that he's Bo Nix is so experienced that Sean might give him more than he can handle. Like, oh yeah, this isn't too much for you. You got 6 years of quarterback experience, and he puts too much on his plate. That was his like, and he even admitted he was like, this is like nitpicking, at this point.
Right.
But I don't think Sean's gonna do that. Do you think there's a chance Sean, puts too much on Bo Nix's plate too early?
I mean, I think during their 30 for 30 interview or whatever they call it, when they get 30 interviews with the rookies, I think they already tried to overplate him. They gave him basically 3 days worth of stuff to intake in 12 hours, and the dude blew him away at the interview with how much he got done. So I
Yeah,
don't know, man. I really don't think so. I think all signs point to the kid being ready to just take it on and learn and run the offense. So I don't think that I'm not worried about that personally, just from all the news that's coming out of there.
yeah. And that's a great point. That story of like, and then Sean was like, I don't know if he must have been drinking coffee up all night, and Sean,
Right,
he
yeah.
he loves it. It's like a football junkie getting their high. It's like, oh, he got no sleep. He was up all night. This is our guy.
Yeah, I mean,
He has no
they're
balanced
seems like
work
they're cut
life.
from the same cloth.
Exactly. And his dad, high school football coach, just won the state championship. I mean, this is just like totally Sean's guy. And
Right.
that's what made my opinion on it change a little bit, where it was like, I felt such an idiot for thinking, oh, why would you draft him at 12? You don't have a second round pick. And then Sean's like, yeah, we don't have a franchise quarterback. And, we believe that there's one on the board that could be a long term
Right.
answer at quarterback. You want to sacrifice that for a third round pick? Like, you're a complete moron if you do that.
Well,
And I was like,
and the other thing that I've learned, I think, is that like Paxton Lynch taught me that just because a quarterback has all the tools, if he doesn't put in the work and isn't a student of the game, it doesn't amount for crap, right? I'd much rather have a less athletic quarterback that is willing to put in the extra time and be humble and grind it out than somebody who just thinks they're God's gift because they already are physically talented.
when Brock Osweiler took all that money for the Houston Texans, why do you think he didn't work out? Because obviously he was a huge part of our Super Bowl 50 run. Maybe
Right.
without Brock Osweiler, we don't even have that Super Bowl. Um, of course, Peyton Manning was the quarterback throughout the whole postseason, but how did we get to that point? Brock Osweiler. I mean, you got those games against the Patriots where the Patriots were undefeated, and we beat the Patriots with C.J. Anderson running it in overtime. Like, you go back at these
Right.
moments where Brock Osweiler was so important, but then he didn't work out. Why do you think he didn't work out? And do you think Denver should have signed him?
I mean, I think Denver obviously didn't want to pay his price that he was asking for, right? But I think that maybe on him it was a little foolish too because he thought he could go out and learn a new offense. Maybe if he would have stayed there under Kubiak's offense, he would have worked out better. I think it takes a lot to fit the scheme with the quarterback and make sure everything's copacetic. The players and everything else. So I think maybe it was a little foolish on his part, and you're right. Maybe it was a little foolish on ours not matching the Texans' pay.
Yeah, I kind of wanted Brock Osweiler. I remember at that point being like, "Oh, well, yeah, this makes sense." And then, he just it was weird how he just like kind of fizzled out of the
Yeah,
league.
he had proved it.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
did you
Not even a
think?
backup.
You're not even a backup. I don't know how that happened so quick. You see that sometimes with players. You're like, where did this guy go? And then you look it up and it's like, he's gone. He hasn't been on a team in 2 years. And you're like, how? You know, the
I
NFL
mean,
is brutal.
look at Paxton Lynch. He can't even catch a starting job up in the CFL. You know, like
Yeah.
we do not we don't do good with quarterbacks. So hopefully this is the change.
No, yeah, we don't do good with quarterbacks. That is a fact. I mean, and then the other quarterback we drafted, I'm blanking on his name. He was the one that got beat up with a vacuum cleaner at Von Miller's Halloween party.
Oh yeah. Brett Rippon. Brett Rippon.
No, not Brett Rippon. It was somebody. It was somebody like that. Um, gosh,
No.
I'm gonna have to Google it really quick. Broncos QB
Yeah,
beat up vacuum. Chad Kelly. Chad Kelly. You remember Chad Kelly?
I know exactly who you're talking
Yeah.
about.
So Chad Kelly, I
Yeah,
mean,
Chad
he was,
Kelly. I knew he was like because we had Rippon and we had Kelly. They're both. I do. Yeah.
yeah, forgettable.
He was undrafted.
Yeah, that definitely not a household name. And um, I was just gonna ask about Chad Kelly because I'm thinking when I think about Chad Kelly, I thought he might have been able to work out in the long run, but he's getting sued right now for sexually harassing one of the I think it's the Canadian Football League staff members, and it's just like, wow, we don't just pick like bad quarterbacks. We happen to like and we're like that person that's always in a toxic relationship. Like we just have a knack for finding the absolute wrong people at the position. So I hope that that's not what's happening here. Obviously, this is the first time the Broncos have gotten to select their own quarterback, and I'm gonna kind of transition now into talking about the Broncos' new uniforms because this is probably the subject where we have gotten the most mixed results from fan bases. So, how do you feel about the Broncos' new uniforms?
I like them. I like the I like the matte helmets. I just think it was time for a change. You know, the the old ones were getting a little dated.
Okay, so that's you didn't feel you like when you saw them, your initial reaction was like they're fine, or was it like, oh, those are
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things I didn't like. You know, the triangles in the jersey and the triangle stripes, not really my thing. But otherwise, I think they're good. You know, I like the homage
yeah, I
to
like
5,280. I like the matte helmets. You know, and I like the color schemes. I think they work well. You can change them up, and they don't look ridiculous like our old uniforms.
yeah, here it is for you guys watching from home. I like the white helmet with the all blue. I don't
Yeah.
know how often they're going to wear that. Obviously, I love the throwback. I wish they would have done the throwback without the striped
Yes.
socks. You agree?
I love the throwback, man. It's the best uniform ever made in the NFL. You know, those throwback orange uniforms are just amazing.
Yeah, they're proving to be timeless. And I never got to see Denver play in them because I was born in '94, and in '94, uh, I mean they were in those uniforms, but I wouldn't have
They were.
remembered it. And then they
You know, I
switched in
think
'98.
97 is when we changed. Yeah, 97,
Yeah,
98,
yeah.
somewhere around there.
And that's when I started remembering a little bit, just a tiny bit. So, um, yeah, my whole life it's always been one uniform. So this is kind of a hard change for me because I've never gone through, a
Yeah.
change before in 30 years. I turned 30 this year, so
Well,
a little bit.
at least, at least for you, we kept the same logo, right? Like for me, when I was a teenager, we lost our logo. We used to have the D, and we lost our D.
Oh, were yeah. Were you upset about that at first?
Oh yeah, man. It was just it was always such a cool thing, right? Like us and the Packers are really the only teams that had like the letter of their town on it.
Yeah, yeah, and
I
the
guess New
Packers.
York.
Yeah, New York. I guess Chicago too, right? They have a C.
Yeah. See, maybe there's a lot. I'm sorry.
I do that all the time. I'm like, oh, it's like one other, and then I think one more and one more, and
Right.
uh, what does Atlanta have? Don't they have ATL?
They have it
No,
on
they
their
have
jersey.
Falcon. It's on their jersey.
Yeah, they have it on their jersey.
Okay, I got too into that fun game, but looking at the games that you start to remember, so you're a little bit older than me. What was your first memories of the Broncos? Like where were they at? Where were they at in their
So
timeline?
I can't remember the year, but I was very young. My aunt was a huge Broncos fan. She's the one that got me into it. But it was basically the Super Bowl we played against the Washington Redskins. I was so young that I was kind of being a brat, and she told me if I didn't root for the Broncos, I could sit outside. And it was Wyoming, and it was January, and I didn't want to sit outside. So that was kind of it, right?
So that was the Super Bowl?
Yeah, that was the Super Bowl.
Wow.
But that was my first time like actually remembering it. I was maybe 5 or 6 years old.
Yeah, that's like my Broncos Packers Super Bowl. It's like barely.
Well, yours
there,
ended better.
Yeah, it did. Maybe that's
my Broncos Packers was like the best feeling ever, man. I was in high school, and everybody like back then used to just talk crap about how the Broncos and John Elway could never get it done, right? Like we'd been to, I think at that time, 3 Super Bowls with John Elway, and we just couldn't get it done. And then I remember walking into high school that, chest puffed out after that Super Bowl Sunday, and man, we had won the Super Bowl against all odds. Like we were huge underdogs.
And that was I'm trying to see what that was 1988. And the Redskins defeated the Broncos.
Yeah, so I was 6 years old then.
42-10. Yeah. I was actually my first Super Bowl that I can like say I absolutely remember, like your Broncos Packers, was the Seahawks Broncos Super Bowl 48.
Oh man,
and
that is a terrible memory.
That was such a bad memory for me. I was living in Miami at the time. I wore all my Broncos gear out to the bar, and the worst part was I still felt like at halftime that they could come back and win the game, because I was like, this is a team that scored 7 touchdowns in their opening game against the Ravens. Like they had the ability to score points quick, and man, I felt like Demaryius Thomas, rest in peace, was the only one that showed up for that game.
Yeah, it was the Star Wars game, the Star Wars offense, right? Like we were supposed to be able to just put up 50 points on anybody at any given time.
Yeah, and I think that game was in New Jersey, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And it was like, oh, that's just great. A quarterback like Peyton Manning, who is known for not playing outdoors in the cold, gets his Super Bowl.
The only cold weather game,
yeah.
Super Bowl in like Super Bowl history.
Yeah, of course. That's how it fell. But then eventually Super Bowl 50. I'm so thankful for that one, especially when you consider not knowing what we know now about the 10 years after Super Bowl 50. That was a really important one.
Right. We're paying our penance.
Yeah.
So two things for that first Super Bowl 48. I was in Fallon, Nevada, and we were on a talking so much crap because I thought we had it in the bag before the game, right? And then that game started. We got that safety, and it was just a bunch of my drunk Navy friends, and they just hounded me for the next 3 hours, the whole game. Most terrible Super Bowl I've ever watched. But Super Bowl 50, I was on vacation in New Orleans, and I was there for Mardi Gras. And Mardi Gras just happened to be the Tuesday after the Super Bowl. So I was down on Bourbon Street, and like there was all these Panther fans, and I was talking crap to all of them, and we were betting shots. And I remember betting a shot that I bet Von Miller would dab on Cam Newton, and then he did. And like by the end of the game, I had more shots lined up on the bar than I could possibly drink. And then I walked down Bourbon Street in my orange Elway jersey, and everybody was throwing beads at me. It was like I had won the Super Bowl.
Oh man, that's an amazing memory. That is cool. I remember for that game, I was a flight attendant at the time, and that's kind of where I discovered my love for flying. and when you're a flight attendant, you can kind of jump flight anywhere you want. So
Yeah.
I made sure I was off during the Super Bowl, and I flew to Denver because I was like, if we
Nice.
win, I want to be in the city.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That was awesome.
it was a good time. Went to Hooters, and um, there were just people on the tables. It was
Yeah.
it was it was insane. It's
Yeah.
funny,
Not
like,
much different. Not much different than Bourbon Street on a Super Bowl Sunday right before right
yeah.
before Mardi Gras.
No, honestly, yours sounds a little bit more fun. Because I once again I was there alone,
Yeah.
so it was like, okay, how many people? It's funny. It's like I always wanted other people to know what it meant to me. You know what I mean? To
Right.
like a family member, or like if I was with my brother, he would have known. But
Right.
it was cool. It was almost like I was like watching, other people's moments versus having my own. Even though I
Yeah.
was like really, really happy. Of course, it was like the best moment of my life as a Broncos fan. So, um,
I
but
was. Oh, go ahead.
oh no, that was what I was gonna say. What were you gonna say?
I was going to say I was in New Orleans with my ex-girlfriend. And so at halftime, because we were obviously drinking heavily for the game, right? So at halftime, she was so drunk she could hardly stand up, and our hotel was like 30 minutes away. So like I'm like running her back to the hotel, right? And like getting her in the hotel and putting her to bed so I could run back to the bar and finish watching the game because, well, I'm a horrible boyfriend, and that's probably why we're exes now.
No, that doesn't sound like your fault. So when I was when it's funny, I have a similar story. When I was watching the Seahawks, my brother wanted to go to a different bar in South Beach in my downtown Miami. It's about a 10 to 15 minute cab ride. So they were like, okay, we'll go at halftime. And I just vividly remember like leaving before halftime, and I had no choice. It was like my brother, my dad, and they were just like, "Come on, we're going to this other bar. We're going to this other bar." And I remember being so angry in the cab, like, why would I ever, let somebody make me miss
Right.
this game? And then,
Yeah.
obviously it didn't matter in the end because it
Right.
wasn't a game. But yeah, kind of a
Yeah.
similar
I
experience where you're just drinking,
I was
trying to.
definitely frustrated, but she needed to get home, you know. So I was like, I'll get you home, but like we gotta hurry. And like I remembered, like I got her in bed, and I was like, I love you, bye. And like I was running back to the bar, you know,
Yeah.
because I
No,
was not gonna watch it in a hotel room.
right. It's like, okay, there's just this one game that if we happen to get to, this takes priority over everything for 3.5 hours. I don't think that's too much to
Right.
ask for. Um,
Right.
but but so looking at the schedule that just came out, I thought the Broncos were gonna play the Steelers week 1. That was my kind of bet
Yeah.
all week or
Yeah.
all
It's
year
the
because
revenge
Russell
game.
Wilson revenge
Yeah. It's
game.
the Russell Wilson revenge game.
And if Russell Wilson's not the starter, then Justin Fields is the starter. And then that kind of takes the value away from the game. So I thought they would want to push it to the front of the schedule to kind of
Yeah.
guarantee they get the most juice out of that. Week 1, as you mentioned, Seattle, then the Steelers. And then week 4, they play the Jets. All of these games kind of have a revenge undertone to them. I
Yeah.
think the first 4 games of the season is going to be really important just for like our mental health as Bronco fans. Like if we lose to Russell Wilson and Nathaniel Hackett and the Seahawks, like that's not going to be like a good season. Like no, I mean, very few things could
I mean,
happen short of us winning the rest of our games. That would make up. Most people are like, no, we have to win those games, and then whatever happens later happens later. But is there any games that you're just most excited about this season, more
yeah.
than
Like
another game?
we have to beat the Raiders. Like what the hell is going on? We have to beat the Raiders. Like that's more important than all those games. Like we haven't
Yeah,
beat the Raiders in what 7, 8 games now.
yeah, and it's the one that doesn't make any sense,
Yeah,
because it's not like the Raiders are like the Chiefs. Okay, the Chiefs happen, but it's like Mahomes. It makes a little bit of
right.
sense.
They're kind of in the middle of a dynasty now. Like we shouldn't have lost 15 games straight to them, but you know But either way, it's the Raiders. It's just my most hated team, and to have them have this win streak over us when they also are. I mean, we have been arguably a dumpster fire, but they are not much better. In fact, they're probably arguably worse.
Yeah, and not to make light of losing to the Raiders, but Week 18, when the Broncos lost to the Raiders 14-27,
That made us. It gave us the Bo Nix.
Bo Nix. Because a lot of people think the Raiders would have drafted Bo Nix had he been available.
For sure. Once Penix was gone, once Atlanta screwed it all up and took Penix off the board, like I have no doubt that the Raiders would have took Bo Nix if we gave him the chance to.
Yeah, so that one, whatever. But the first Raiders games come in Week 5, October 6th. It's going to be in Denver. I was at the season opener last year against the Raiders in Denver. And man, that was a deflating thing because that was like Sean Payton's first game. He's going to fix Russ. And it's like, here we go again. And not only here we go again, but if you remember what plagued us the year before with Nathaniel Hackett is that we couldn't score more than 16 points. That was our number. We always got 16 points, and then we would lose 16-17. I saw a stat during Nathaniel Hackett's year that said if the Broncos had scored 24 points in regulation, they would be 11-1 by week 12. Like, that's how good our defense was playing. So, the fact that Sean and the Broncos scored 16 points, I mean, I was just like, oh no, this is the same thing that we had last year. So, you expect us to be a better football team this year? I know the stuff's going on with Courtland Sutton right now. I put out a post that Bronco fans started attacking me because, of course, I love Courtland Sutton. He's the longest tenure Bronco on the team right now, and he does bring leadership to a group that needs somebody to be that leader. But I don't see Courtland Sutton as like a make it or break it type of guy for the Broncos just because we drafted Troy Franklin. We brought in Reynolds from Detroit. Tim Patrick,
but none of those fill the role. Except for Tim Patrick, if he can stay healthy, nobody else fills the role that Courtland Sutton does, right? Like, he's our red zone threat. When you get down inside the 10, he's the guy that's going to high point the ball.
But my thinking is, sure, but then there's going to be a guy, right? There always has to be a guy that emerges when there's not a guy. Like, you could say that the Texans went into last year and people said they don't have a guy. And then Tank Dell and Nico Collins turned out to be both guys. Right. It's just a matter of like getting these guys on the field and seeing what they can do. Like our tight end, Nick. I made a whole video about him. Number 80. Yeah. Is it Nicholas Kroll? I think it's Nicholas Kroll, number 85.
Yeah. The guy.
Sean was saying in his press conference yesterday, he was like, everybody was looking down at their sheet trying to see who's 85. And then he told him,
like, who is this guy? Yeah,
exactly. And then Sean said he went up to him and told him by the end of this year, they're going to know who 85 is. And I did a little bit of research.
Which is good because tight end is
very thin.
Tight end is what we need right now.
Yeah, because it's like another one of those big injury questions with Greg Dulcich. Like, is he going to be able to stay healthy?
Yeah, and if he doesn't, we got Troutman, right? So we need somebody to step up.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody's really high on Adam Troutman. I mean, he's a very well-rounded tight end, but he's not like tier 1.
No, he's there for run blocking, and he can catch if you need him to, right? But he's not going to stretch the field like you want a good pass-catching tight end to do.
Right, and as long as, a lot of times, like when we had Noah Fant, great pass-catching tight end, but a liability in the run game. So,
right. And even before that, in Julius Thomas, right? Like, great pass catcher, couldn't block worth a shit. That's why we had Virgil Green.
And that's kind of what I'm thinking with Kroll is I think that he's going to really kind of maybe make some strides. If Sean's saying that about him, chances are he's going to put him on the field, decent amount of time, enough
the
time for
dude's
him to really take that next step.
the dude's a monster
Is there anybody
too. I
on
think
the?
he's like 6'5", 260 pounds. The dude's huge.
Yeah, I think I even saw 6'6" on most
Yeah,
of mine in 250. I mean, and he has speed too. And if
right.
you
Like what
watch
I'm
him,
saying, yeah, he's huge. I wouldn't want to tackle him.
yeah, and he's a good like if you see how he finishes plays, like he puts his shoulder down and fights for the extra
Right.
yards. And so that it's not that I don't think like, oh, Sutton's valuable on the team. It's just that, like, whatever happens, like right now we're in a financial situation where if we can't meet Cortland Sutton's, whatever his contract requirements are, the more guaranteed money that he wants at this point, then, I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm just saying, all right, well, what does this next chapter look like? Because that's kind of the
Right.
last piece hanging
I think
from what the Broncos were.
I think ultimately the Broncos hold all the leverage here, right? Cortland Sutton isn't he's not a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL, so he's not going to sit out for the season. Denver owns his contract for one more year, I believe, and likely he's going to leave the team next year, make room for Mims and make room for Troy Franklin. So either way, I think he plays. I don't think it's going to really hurt us that he's missed OTAs, and that's just the way I see it.
Yeah, no, I see it like that too. And remember, everybody was pissed off at the Browns after they gave Deshaun Watson $240 million guaranteed, because they were like, you
Right.
just fucked up the market for all of the quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Now we
Guaranteed.
have to.
Yeah, guaranteed.
Now they're all expecting this absurd amount of money, and it's kind of a similar tune with Jerry Jeudy. You give him what I think like $60-some million. It was a big contract. And, you got Cortland Sutton sitting there like, I was the best receiver, and Jerry Judy's making, this much money. Like, I think it's
Yeah.
another thing where Cortland Sutton's just like, this isn't fair. Like, I want to go somewhere where they're going to pay me like Jerry Judy's getting paid right now. Is that
And
fair?
I get that. I get that, but honestly, I don't want our football team to operate that way, right? Like Jerry Jeudy showed us nothing to signify that he was even deserving of that contract. So I'm glad that our football team doesn't hand out contracts the way the Browns does. Like, to me, that is a positive. And if Cortland Sutton wants to walk away next season after he becomes an unrestricted free agent, then more power to him, But I think that at the end of the day, either way, he's going to show up to training camp and for the mandatory team meetings and the mandatory team activities, because I don't think he wants to lose that money because he's just not that high profile of a player.
I agree with all that. And it was a 3-year, $52 million deal, $41 million guaranteed, and an average annual salary of $17.5 million
That's a good
for a
contract.
really good route runner, not a great
Right,
football player from what we've seen.
He can't finish plays. Whether it's getting both
Can't
feet in
finish.
bounds or whether it's catching the ball. Like, he doesn't finish plays the way that $17 million a year football player should.
Yeah, and I actually made like a comparison. So I went on PFF and I looked at the grade that he got this year, and his grade was one above Gabriel Davis. And I was like, okay, but Gabriel Davis was a 4th round selection in the draft.
Right, not
right.
What was he, like, number 12 overall, number 11 overall, something like that?
Yeah, I think it was 12 overall. And then you had CeeDee Lamb drafted after him. You had Brandon Ayuk drafted after him. You can always play
at the time, it was the right pick, right? Like, I remember when it came up, everybody thought that Jerry Jeudy was going to be the thing. We would have been dumb to pick any of them before him at the time, right? Like, looking at it in hindsight, it's always easy.
Well, I think I remember it a little differently. I remember it being like kind of this year where it was like Marvin Harrison, of course, was the best, but some people said Malik Neighbors has a higher ceiling. Rome Odunze was also, because there was CeeDee Lamb was right there, and if I'm not mistaken, he was drafted with the next pick.
No, Henry Ruggs. Henry
Ruggs. Yeah,
which I'm glad we dodged that bullet.
Yeah, I'm glad we did that too. Of course, the Raiders found him, but when you look at CeeDee Lamb, and his production and Justin Jefferson and
Right.
some of these other guys, it's like, no, you have not earned, $52
Right.
million. You haven't done, but it's not surprising that the Browns would have been the team to do that. Is there anybody kind of hidden on the depth chart right now that you feel like is going to, have that kind of like Julius Thomas type emergence onto the scene this year? Of
So
course, we.
I'm a Wyoming Cowboy fan, right? And we picked up an undrafted free agent, Crum, the tackle Crum, and he
Yeah.
is a monster. Like I think he's like 6'6", like over 300 pounds, and super athletic. I don't think that he makes the starting lineup, but I think he makes special teams with the new kickoff rules, right? Because you're going to have basically a line of scrimmage on the kickoff. I think he's going to be a difference maker in special teams in that form.
What did you think about the Frank Crum is
Yeah.
his
Yeah,
name?
he's an
Yeah,
undrafted free agent, but his athletic skill is insane for a tackle, man.
Yeah, and Denver's got a great track record of finding undrafted free agents. Jaleel McLaughlin last year, Chris Harris Jr.
So look, I guess low key, what I'm saying, I think he makes maybe special teams this year, makes the 53, makes special teams this year, just because of his ability to like be physical and he has the athletic abilities. He's quick for his size, And then next year, I think maybe we move on from Bowles because he's getting up there in age and he's coming into a contract year. So between Mike McGlinchey and then who else do we got? Maybe we can develop this kid.
Yeah, one of the guys I really liked was Lavelle Bailey out of Fresno State.
Yeah.
When I went through and just watched his highlights, I was like, this guy looks like somebody that could compete. And then Blake Watson, getting another running back. And, Sean always has multiple running backs. Like he loves having, 3-4 running backs on the roster.
Right now we got four that are likely going to be on the roster. Jaleel McLaughlin and undrafted free agents that we got. So it's going to be a tight room.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I'm trying to think. So do you think between Audric Estime and Javonte Williams, do you think Javonte could potentially lose some snaps if, Audric is, really good first? And the thing is, he's going to be a
running back is one of those things.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, like he's like looks like the guy that they're gonna bring in on short yardage situations, maybe 3rd and 1, 4th and goal, on the goal line, stuff like that. But I think when you look at Audric Estime, it's like, okay, Javonte Williams kind of is good in that short yardage situation too. So you got kind of two running backs that are both good in those like I need 1 yard situations. It's not like that big of a yin yang. It's not like Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, like, oh, look at how versatile they are. I mean, they seem like kind of similar. They're going to break tackles. They don't necessarily have breakaway speed for the big play. But I mean, Jaleel McLaughlin definitely has that speed, but he had the worst pass protection grade, like of any running back in the league. Like it's so bad. So the fact is every time he comes onto the field, the defense is like, oh, it's a design play to him because he's definitely not here to pass block because he can't.
Right.
So then we became one directional. Out of the running back room, like who do you think is going to have the most yards this year?
I think probably Javonte, as long as he bounces back. Last year was pretty tough on him after his injury year, especially at the end of the season. It seemed like he was kind of running out of gas. Like the tank was getting a little empty at the end of the season. But Estime is a beast. That guy looks like he could eat a linebacker, let alone run him over. So who really knows? No,
that dude.
No, so I would hate to be the opposing defense if Javonte shows up in his rookie form and we have Estime also to spell him. Like that's going to be something I would not want to tackle for fourth quarters. Because somebody's going to be fresh in the backfield.
We got about like 5 minutes left here. I was just gonna ask you about your all-time favorite Bronco moments, like kind of putting aside Super Bowl wins. Obviously those are all gonna rank high, but maybe a moment that you
Right.
were just like, I'll never forget this.
Yeah, I remember it was like a fourth quarter comeback. Again, the Broncos were playing the Redskins. I think it was a regular season game. Like, we're going back in history now, but Elway threw it to Rod Smith in fourth quarter comeback to win the game, right? Like I will always remember that. I mean, you can go back because Elway was always my favorite player growing up. Like, I idolized the dude, right? He was great. But you can also go back to like the Tim Tebow miracle, and against Pittsburgh in the playoffs. There's been a lot of great moments. But for me, I think that the Elway to Rod Smith in some random game against Washington Redskins was it for me,
And for those of you that are going to be watching this later, I'll find that game and I'll have the link in the comments to the highlights of it. Yeah, the Demaryius Thomas, Tim Tebow. Do you remember? I don't know if
Yeah,
you
from
will.
Tim Tebow.
That Tim Tebow season, there was a game against the Bears, and I remember they were down. I think they were down multiple possessions, and there was like 5 minutes left in the game. And they came back and won the game with a couple like ridiculously long field goals. And then they sent it into overtime and won. And that was kind of like, it's Tebow time. And I remember Tebow time.
Yeah, it's the Tebow magic. I don't remember that
Yeah.
specific game, but I remember us doing that a lot. I remember us doing it against the Dolphins that season. Like, it was a crazy time to be a Bronco fan because we were playing horrible offensive football for 3 quarters, and then all of a sudden in the fourth quarter we'd find a way to pull it out of our butt.
Yeah, and it was even what was really crazy about it is we went to school at the school Tim Tebow went to in Ponte Vedra, Florida, at Nice. So I was always following Tim Tebow really closely from high school and at Florida. When he first got to Florida, he was a backup. He didn't start his
Right.
freshman year. Chris Leak, I think, was the starting quarterback, and Tebow would come in only on like short yardage situations. I would have never thought in a million years, that he was going to be a Broncos quarterback, and it was so cool. Like he was,
It was a
and
cool
he was,
season, man. It was such a cool season. Like, I'm so glad we got rid of him for Peyton Manning, but it was a fun season. We haven't had a fun season like that since 2015. Like, I'd give anything for a Tim Tebow season.
I know. Were you surprised that how fast he kind of ended up out of the league?
Kind of. I mean, I wasn't surprised how fast Elway got rid of him because Elway wanted a passer, right? So I wasn't surprised that he left the Broncos once we got rid of Josh McDaniels and everything. But I was surprised that he didn't catch on anywhere else. Even in like what's that cat's name down in New Orleans? Like that type of a role.
Taysom Hill?
Yeah, like that type of a role, right?
Yeah, that's what that's what I thought too. I was like, man, this guy was so good at football at every level, and now all of a sudden he's just not in the league. But it was almost like the fans, with the chanting Tebow, like he's just too big of a star to be a backup. It was like the Cam Newton effect. It's like,
right,
you're good enough to be a backup, but
it's just not worth the trouble in the locker room.
Exactly. So, was there anything that that I didn't ask you that you wanted me to ask you? I always ask that at the end.
No, not really. Honestly,
Awesome.
it's been a good interview, and hopefully the Broncos have a great season.
Yeah, man. Well, you can always come back on. I tell it to all the guests that I interview. So, hope you enjoy, your vacation, and congratulations on your retirement.
Yeah, I mean, I will. It's hard not to enjoy paradise. I'm on a sandy beach right now, like living in a hotel room, basically 100 meters from the beach. Palm trees, nice weather, so it's real tough.
Man, I'm jealous. I'm in Middle Tennessee right now.
Yeah, I can't wait to get back to Wyoming, though, man. Like, get back to the wide open spaces and being able to watch football again. Like, I started this trip in December, and I didn't watch much football after that. You know, once I got into Asia, it's hard to watch football down here.
Yeah, and I always tell people like I never really not respected, but I just didn't appreciate the United States until went on my first deployment. Because a lot of times
Yeah.
people leave the country, but it's for what, a week, two
Well,
weeks
and
tops.
yeah, and your deployments were different from my deployments, right? Like I was stuck on a ship. You were in hotels.
Yeah, yeah, but no, but it's still like you do miss the United States after months. It's not.
Yeah, no.
It's not.
You,
No. I'm definitely not complaining. I mean, we
no,
stay at the
you're
boot.
absolutely right. I just had to bust your balls a little bit, you know, for being a little bit of a sailorette.
Oh, they say choose your rate, choose your fate. I chose wisely because we can't land on a carrier. We're too big.
Right. Nah. No, I got it, man. I've spent 1,723 days on it out to sea, so you definitely chose better than I did.
Well, man, it's been a real pleasure to have you on. You're first Navy guy that I've ever gotten on the channel. So, just thanks for coming on, and hopefully we'll be able to touch base again during the season.
Yeah, man. Go Broncos, and God bless Bo Nix.
God bless Bo Nix. See ya.
See you later.